And the equipment I have is G Loomis, Shimano, and Power Pro, Big Hammer Lures, and all that good stuff for you to fish inshore bass.
All right.
I'm Jimmy Decker, and I'm a licensed 100-ton captain. I run Fishing with Decker's guide service. I pretty much run along the same lines as Benny, although I do a lot of more. Benny gets a lot of anglers that already know how to fish or have already owned their own boats. I do a lot of instructional first and second time anglers, father-son trips, grandfather-grandson kind of things. Targeting calico bass along the coast with rubber worms, and then over to the local islands here in California.
All right, thanks.
Jack Sowell.
The one and only. Thank goodness.
I'm not licensed. They won't even give me one. I tried. I just fish locally, either at the island, on the beach, Palos Verdes, anywhere there's water and I can get my boat into it. That's where we go.
All right, Corey Sanden.
Corey Sanden from MC Swim Baits. Passionate fishing the inshore calico bass and making the lures to do it with. And I think we're here to share a good time. Absolutely, I appreciate being here with all the good anglers here.
All right, so here's the way we're going to work this deal. I'm going to ask a few questions, and I want everybody, it's the audience participation program, so there's a microphone right there. I'll ask a couple questions, kind of stimulate things going, and then we want you guys to ask questions. You have questions about catching calico bass, because that's what we're here for. So first question I want to throw out to our panel here, how do you catch big calico bass? Everybody wants to catch big fish. How do you target big fish?
Big women.
Corey, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. You know, I narrowed down pretty simple. Can everybody hear me all right? The mic working? Yeah?
Yep.
Good times. All right. I narrowed down really quick, and the bigger the lure, the bigger the fish. And I pretty much set down the 5-inch baits and put that stuff aside and jump toward the bigger baits to target bigger fish. I mean, it's pretty simple, really. And in doing so, you bump up your line size, bump up your gear, and pretty simply said, just a bigger offering for bigger fish. You know, you're probably going to get fewer bites, but they're going to be bigger.
All right, Jack, how do you catch a big one?
Come on, Jack. Big woman!
It's pure luck. I fish the big baits, little baits, and there's a new one I forgot. Viejos. I've been fishing the federal breakwater a lot at night. This is the Viejos, but they've got one that's about half that size, 5-inch. It really works great on the federal breakwater. And other than that, I don't know. They eat and they eat. Don't eat, go home. Cuddle up in blankets, get warm.
Jimmy?
Pretty much the key to catching large calico bass is time on the water. Throw a big bait, spend a lot of time on the water, go fishing whenever you can, forget what they tell you about the tide, the moon, the wind, just get on a boat and get your bait in the water because you can't catch them sitting on the couch.
All right, Benny Florentino.
I'm going to have to agree with all these guys here about...
It's hard going last, huh?
I've been going first all week, so... But in that same lines is getting out there, putting your equipment to use, big bait, big fish. Yes, you can probably catch a lot of fish on small baits. I know this panel here, we all try to target those trophies. And you know, when we talk about trophy bass, we're talking 7+ pound fish. 7 to 10 pounds is our target. I believe we can all still catch that 1 to 4 pound pretty easily on the small baits, 4-inch, 5-inch, even 5.5. But you know, when you're throwing baits in excess of 8 inches to 10-inch baits, you're really targeting that trophy. And you know, just kind of reading the conditions, but you got to get out there, put time on the water, and watch everything kind of happen and use the equipment on your boat.
All right, so how heavy do you want to fish? Okay, let's talk about tackle for a second. You want to catch fish, are you fishing 12-pound test?
No. You know, as far as targeting trophy calico bass, you know, I'm fishing a heavy rod that's probably rated 15 to 30 pound monofilament, but I'm fishing 65 to even 80 pound Power Pro, and straight tie to swim baits, such as this 5.5 inch big hammer, and 80 pound with some of the weedless baits with about a 60 pound leader. And you know, heavy gear, big tackle. I've been using the new Calcutta D400 heavy rod, you know, extra heavy rod, and extra heavy line in very, very bad places.
Jimmy?
That's true, yeah. I think along with most of the guys here, I'm fishing, I'm a little lighter than most guys. On my small reels on the inshores, I'm fishing 40 pound braid, 40 to 30, 40 to 40, 40 straight tide, and then on my heavier setups, I'm fishing 50 or 65 pound for my gear. I like my rods to have a little bit softer tip to take up for the lack of stretch in the braid. And now that everybody's fishing, it gives you a little bit easier time to let the fish take the bait and to get the hook in it. But the days of you know, 15 and 20 pound mono are pretty much gone by the wayside. And one thing about what Benny, I just clicked in, and I've had guys asking me at the booth all week about the line rating for the rod. You can pretty much, when they did my new line of rods, which Corey also has his own line of rods this year, I wanted them to put unlimited on them. I didn't want a line class rating on the rods. I just wanted a suggestion of the ounce rating for the heads. But they put 8 to 16, 20 to 30, you know, just take that number and throw it away. That means absolutely nothing to you anymore. Only thing you're worried about is how heavy a bait the tip of your rod can handle. Because any rod can handle, you can't break a rod unless you high stick it nowadays. If you tied 65 pound to it and just started leaning back in it with the drag completely locked. So that line rating on the rod's pretty much a thing of the past, in my opinion. So yeah, you know, you got to go big or you got to go home, and when you go home, it's a very sad day.
Jack, what about you? What about tackle and how heavy? You hit fishing heavy also?
I get the coil of rope no, I've been fishing. I dropped from the 65 pound test. I went down to 50. I didn't go down to 50. They give me a couple spools of 50, and I started trying it. And I get it hung up, and you cannot break it. You can tip the boat over to 50, and it casts great. I like fishing tight to the island, and my ideal conditions is when I can throw over the kelp to the beach, swim from the beach to the kelp. I'll lift the rod tip and work the bait over the kelp, and you can see the bass in the kelp bumping it. And the minute it drops off that edge and it sinks is where I'll get bit. And I've been fishing this head here. Benny's got one here. These warheads. I even take the weed guard off. The way they got the eye on it, they will, if you work it right, you can get it right over the kelp, over the rocks. It doesn't hang up. It's a fantastic head. I really like it. So that's the way I normally fish, is on the beach, over the kelp. A lot of times I get bit in the kelp, or even before I get to the kelp. But the rule is it comes over the kelp, it drops down when you get bit. Or when you're swimming over the kelp, it comes in the sink, you come back up, it'll bite it dead.
Okay, so Corey?
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, definitely everything we're fishing here, Benny kind of hit it on the head too. If I'm fishing 40 pound braid, it's pretty light. I mean, most of everything I'm using is at least minimal 50 pound braid up to 80 pound braid, and very short top shot leaders of 50, 60, 80 pound fluorocarbon. And kind of like Jim said about the line ratings on a rod, I mean, I'm using a 7 foot rated 12 to 20 pound mono, but the braid is 50 and 65 pound braid. You know, I mean, it's kind of the evolution of everything. I mean, braid's been around for 14, 15 years, really, and become very popular in the last 8 years. So I think the line ratings have yet to catch up to what we're Certainly. That about hits it on the head. Okay. Any questions yet from the audience? Go ahead and step up the mic there, sir.
Most of us don't get to spend as much time on the water.
Get a little closer back there.
Most of us don't get to spend as much time on the water as you guys do. What is a minimum line size you would say? You know, we don't want to hook an 8-pound bass and lose it. But we, you know, most of the time we're trying to have fun and catch some fish. We got kids on the boat. We're fishing, you know, 20 or 30. I fish 30-pound braid most of the time. Is that something that you know, you got a reasonable chance for a good fish, or should you're going like, hey, you're wasting time?
No, absolutely. 30-pound, you know, if you're fishing, say, Palos Verdes, and you're on the edge of the kelp on the outside as opposed to inside, because and Corey will get into this a little bit later, but you can't get away with 30-pound. The chances of losing bigger fish are probably greater because of the abrasion factor, especially if they get that bait down. And again, these are tactics we use for catching and hooking, catching and landing trophy bass. But you know, yeah, have we caught big bass on 4-inch baits? Yes, we have. And have we caught them on 40-pound? I mean, Jimmy's caught, you know, bass in excess of 8 pounds on 40-pound braid, even 30-pound braid with clients.
My biggest bass was on 20-pound braid to a 20-pound leader. That's what I used to fish exclusively. 20 to 20, that was my deal. Because I didn't really see any point to go heavier. It was hard for me to break 20 pound, you know, and I like that little bit lighter tip. You know, I've always been a little bit looser kind of guy, heavy drag, loose tip. But, you know, my biggest local fish was on 20-pound spider wire ultra cast and a short piece of 20-pound a leader. A lot of it has to do with where you hook them. You know, can they get home before you can put the beans to them? You know, if you get lucky and you hang one in 15 feet of water out and maybe on top of some eelgrass or some hard bottom, your chances are a lot better than throwing a 20-pound in there and 3 feet of water into some surging rocks, you know, because they only have to go to meet a current. And a lot of times all that is the rod loading up. They can get 3 feet by the distance that it just takes to put a full bend in your rod, you know. So, I mean, a lot of it has to do with where you hook them. You can definitely catch big fish on lighter tackle. It's just a matter of, you know, how stupid is the fish that you catch.
Any of you guys want to weigh in? Jack?
Yeah, I do want to weigh in on that. Because I use the heavy leader, at least 40-pound test. And I'm not worried about them breaking it. What I'm worried about, if you get calicos over 5 pounds, even 4 pounds, and you stick your thumb in their mouth and flip them, they got a set of teeth that'll really surprise you. And they can take 40-pound tests and make 12-pound tests out of it real fast. So that's the reason I use the heavy leader. And also when I catch a fish and I dump it back over the side, I know I've seen 100 guys go on my boat and turn around and throw the same jig out there and not check, run their fingers over that line. And a lot of times, 6 to 8 inches up from the hook, it'll be down to nothing. It looks like somebody took a knife to it. So whenever you do catch a big fish, always check that leader. And I start out with a 4-foot leader on the Power Pro, and within 2 hours I'm putting on another leader. I'll cut it off, and then finally I end up putting another one on. But you want to watch your leaders. I don't care what you're using, 60 or 40 or whatever, to make sure they haven't chomped it all up. And the big calicos will.
Yeah, Jack makes a great point. If you are going to fish light and you are getting those bites with that light diameter braided line, you really have to make sure you check that, you know, that first part of your line. Make sure there's no nicks, and you know, your connections have to be spot on. You know, it's okay to retie after catching a decent one, a 3, 4, 5 pound fish, and just reconnect. It just takes a second. That's really critical if you are going to say. But fishing that light braid, you will get bites. It'll be more challenging if they angle you in the wrong way. That's for sure.
Corey? Yeah, you know, one of the things that wasn't hit on, the reason
Mike, hold on a second. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that don't know, Mr. Mike Gardner just came swinging through the booth here, over here to my left. Mike has been an inspiration to probably every bass fisherman that's walked the face of the planet Earth, and I just I just want to say what a true privilege it is to have him as one of my mentors and a truly good friend and just a pioneer in the sport of calico bass fishing. And Mike, I love you, buddy. I really do. Go ahead, Corey. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, it's all good, man.
Say hi to Mike.
Choking us all up here, man. But you know, one of the things we didn't hit on is throwing the bigger baits here. It's not really fishing on 30 pound, not even 40 pound. The reason it's 50 and 60 pound braid is it digs into itself on the spool. I'm sure you've had it plenty of times with a 30 pound braid. It's such a small diameter, it digs into itself on the spool. You know, you can get away with 30 pounds straight to, you know, straight to the fish, but it's really a pain in the rear on the spool. I mean, that's really, it just, you want it to be clean and efficient. That's why you bump up the diameter, and that's why you're looking at 50 and 60, 80 pound braid. It just makes it clean.
That's why I say I used to fish 20 pound.
Back in the good old days.
Now I'm up to pretty much 40 on my light stuff.
When you're fishing that even 40 pound spectre or 50 pound spectre and you hook a fish, well, you set that hook really hard, wind him in, you take him off, and if you don't drop that line in the water and peel some line off, get back to where you set that hook with spectra, that spectra is cut down through the spool. And what happens if you don't check it, you make a cast, it gets out there so far, it just stops. And then you have this really neat, well, macrame, throw the reel away, you'll never get the back by shot.
Anybody else have another question for the audience? Go ahead and step up there, please.
Fishing just pure artificial, or are you ever putting squid on or anything else?
We're pretty much straight rubber checkers. You know, the trick that our whole thing is fooling a predator into biting something that's not alive or natural to them. You know, fooling the fish is what it's all about. You know, there's a place for live bait fishing, and that's on the party boat, in my opinion.
Do you ever pin a piece of squid on your baits or anything like that?
The only time I have bait on my boat is if I'm doing a father-son trip, or a grandfather that brings his grandson out, and they're, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and then I'll post up on the leading edge of a kelp bed, and I'll get the spinning rods out, and I'll hopefully have a tank of anchovies, and we'll get the fish going. But most of the guys want to learn how to catch a fish on something that's not a fish, you know.
Is that because you're elitist purist, or it just works better if you know what you're doing without a piece of squid?
I don't like squid. It smells, it attracts flies, it's very hard to clean up off of the boat. I can't stand sardines, their scales get everywhere. If I'm with that kid and we're fishing, my number one rule is I pin the baits on. Because the first thing Dad does after he chokes that sardine to death is reaches up onto my center console and wipes his hands off on the first thing he can get a hold of. So I'm going like this for the next, and the next guy that gets on my boat, I don't want him to ever know there's been a sardine on my boat. So I'm scratching and scrapping scales for the next 3 hours. And I don't know if it's an elitist thing or it's just the actual challenge of making something. I mean, I don't want to eat that chair, you know, and there's no way in the world I would, but if you made that chair look like a really good hamburger, I might take a whack at it if I'm hungry.
No, what I meant by that question was, Jimmy Decker, if he pins a piece of squid on the piece of bait, not the kid or anything,
right, no.
Are you going to get bit better with that bait with a piece of squid on?
It takes away from the action of the bait, and I honestly feel that I can, if the fish are biting and they're biting the anchovy and I'm standing next to a guy that's pinning on anchovies and I have a swim bait rod in my hand, I honestly feel that I can outfish him with a rubber worm.
All right, Jack?
The last guy I took out that had cut squid, I was very upset, but he kept pinning it on, and we were over at the island, and for some reason the wasp over there liked cut squid, and eventually he got really nailed. And I said, well, you know, I'll get rid of the squid because they were all over his can of squid and all over the side of the boat. So them wasp over there, John, I really like that cut squid. So go ahead.
So, okay, so while we're on that same subject, what about scent? You guys, Corey, what about scent? Or Jack, since you have the mic.
I've been known to use hot sauce and some of the different ones.
Yeah.
When it really gets slow, you try anything, you know. It's got to work because I've got bit. So whatever helps.
Yeah, you know, scent does. It's a confidence thing, you know. In tournaments, we fish scent, especially when we're fishing, you know, kind of creature type baits that are, you know, near the bottom, like the one Jimmy has. Sometimes those bites get really tough, and you need something where the fish is going to hold on to the bait. Some of the surface lures, like these weedless and even swim baits, not really necessary because they're attacking that bait with full force. But I think any advantage where a fish is going to hang on for that split second, where they inhale it for just that split second, that you can set the hook. If it gives you confidence, why not use it? It couldn't hurt. There's some great manufacturers out there locally. You know, Ron Bueller at Edge Products has hot sauce. Tommy Gomes, who's here at the show, has uni butter. He's from San Diego. And there's, you know, those seem to be the best because they don't smell god-awful when you put it on your bait.
They attract wasps?
They attract wasps and every other flying thing out there. And it's really easy to use. It's almost just squeeze it onto the bait and you can go fishing.
Do you put that in a baggie sometimes and then drop your bait into the baggie?
Yes, you know,
Put it on the cooler top, or
we've been known to get pretty creative. You know, my wife probably hates it because I'll grab one of those little plastic nice Tupperware things that seal real good. You know, we'll dump a bunch of hot sauce and do a special batch of uni sauce. That's uni butter and hot sauce together. But yeah, simple way, put it in a bag, dip your bait in, seal it back up. You know, you just dip it right in there, seal it back up there, and there you go. Now in the old days, on Jack's boat, he used to squirt that stuff almost everywhere on the rail, and you'd stick your hand in. I just remember in the early days, he goes, watch out, kid, for that stuff over there. And sure enough, you'd put your hand in there and slide halfway up the rail, and next thing you know, you're trying to fish with hot sauce all over your rod.
Well, Benny used to get a lot of hot sauce on and it would fall off on the deck. And then you would step in and get it all over the boat to where you end up ice skating all over the boat trying to hang on because hot sauce is really slick on fiberglass.
But while we're on the subject of scents, Jack, you brought up a good point about your hands, touching your baits. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, I talked about that the other day, but what guys make a mistake is they pick their boat up in the morning and they put gas in it. They got gas in their hands and they mix oil in it. Then they got old boat lines that are all filthy dirty and their hands are filthy, and then they go fish and wonder why they can't catch fish. I carry a bar of soap or a little squirt bottle, and when I get to where I'm going to go, I always wash my hands before I start fishing.
So you think it makes a difference if you put a scent that is not attractive to fish? You think that's a detractor?
Yeah, I think dirty hands, grease and oil and gas will shut the fish off really fast.
Okay. All right, another question. Go ahead and step up there.
When it comes to artificial baits, do Calico Bass have a favorite color?
Say again.
Do Calico Bass have a favorite color?
Good question.
Well, I tell you what, you could ask each one of us what our favorite color is, and I think that's the one that Calico Bass like. But you'll see kind of a pattern of colors that look very, very similar, and that's up here. And I know at Corey's booth you can go there and you can almost ask every one of his pro guys what are their favorite colors, and there is a pattern of color that they like. Like for instance, you know, my favorite color is the this war bait in burnt color, and a number 20 big hammer in 5.5 toast. And it's got a golden brown bait, brown back, and an orange belly. I've been fishing and preaching this color for I don't know how many years at a lot of the seminars, but this is the bait I think Calico Bass like.
Jimmy, what's your confidence bait?
I have a lot of confidence in the 7-inch jerk shaft. It doesn't really matter what color it is. You know, sometimes it's a nuclear chicken, which doesn't look like any creature that's ever swam in the ocean. Sometimes it's a camo, which is a brown one. It's more about what color do you think's going to get bit, if you know what I'm saying. A lot of guys, they can't stand brown. I'm sorry, Jack, to say that. But a lot of guys only like to throw green baits. You know, there's a lot of guys that only like to throw, not only, but their confidence bait is an anchovy pattern, or it's something more of a senorita fish style. You know, you have to have the confidence what's tied on the end of your line to get bit. Benny can say that this bait works great, and I know for a fact it does because I've seen the fish that he's caught on it. Jack loves the brown baits. You'd be very hard pressed to ever find him tied off with something that isn't a brown bait or maybe once in a while a sardine pattern. But to say that those work for the three of us doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only one they eat or that's the one that you catch. If I give a client something and let him go through the box, lots of times I'm just roping them on a brown bait, a camo pattern, and the guy's just like, I don't think this one gets bit, man. Which one? Let me look in your box. And I'm just like, help yourself, please, dear God, because I want you to catch a fish. And then he'll reach in and he'll pull out one color that I've probably never even tried or opened the bag up. And he's like, oh, I like this greenish, goldy thing. And I'm like, cool. Rip open the box, spin him up, tie him on, bam, the guy's hanging fish. So you have to have it up here that what's connected to your setup is what's going to be the bait that's going to catch fish for you, because a negative vibe on the end of your line doesn't get it done. You know, you got to have confidence of what you're fishing out there, and you have to know what your bait's doing while it's out there. I learned that firsthand fishing with Corey. You know, I'm like, God damn, Corey, he took me out the first time I ever learned to fish the slug, and he's, ha, 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 you know, fishing away, and I got my little jerk shad on. I'm like, dang, 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 dang. He's like, it's all good, Jim. We're having fun out here. And I'm getting all these little guys, and he's like, oh, you see that one back there? Oh, look at that guy. You know, and then pretty soon, poof, poof. I pin on the slug, and I start throwing it, you know, and I'm watching Corey catch fish on it, and I can't get it. Then Corey's like, well, you know, he's got this many. You know, and I'm like, God, I like that brown one, and he rigs it all up for me, all perfect, and ties it on. I start fishing. He's like, speed it up a little, and then give it the La Paz. Boom, toilet bowl flushes. I got my first slugfish. Been addicted to it ever since. You know, so it's learning the technique that gets bit, having confidence what you have tied on, and then putting the fish in the boat. You know, it's like it's a 3-step thing.
Corey, what's your color? Well, you know, it's like the brighter the sun, the brighter the lure. And I'm either going with a really bright, smelty color, blue grunion, or just a really bright, goldy brown color here. And the darker the day, the darker the lure. And I think a lot of it, like what Jim and Ben said, is it's all in your confidence, you know? If you hung out at the booth for an hour, you would see 20 people come by, and they would all point out a different color.
That one gets killed. No, this one gets killed, you know?
You would absolutely stand there and laugh after I just told you, you know, really. But a lot of what we're doing is, it's a visual reactionary game. And you're drawing a visual reactionary bite. And that's what gets your heart going, because you're racing up on it, the bites are explosive. Basically, I'll throw a really god-awful, gaudy color, and it'll get bit. It's just, you're drawing a reaction, and that's all it is, really. You're just creating the illusion of a bait fish, and like they said earlier, it's being able to trick that predatory fish into biting the plastic that just stimulates your enthusiasm, really. I mean, we're all enthusiasts. We have a passion for what we do, and I'm glad we're here to share it. I love it. Questions anymore?
Yeah, how do you guys decide which kind of a lure to throw, whether it's going to be a deep running lure or a surface?
Let's give that one to Florentino.
For me, You know, that's a great question, because it's like the freshwater guys. You know, you'll ask a freshwater guy, hey, you know, you're going to Lake Okeechobee. What are you gonna start out with? And you know.